This is Adam Simbeye with This Week in Perspective. Last week, for almost 2 days, but seriously on Thursday last week, Dar es Salaam experienced rain downfall which caused havoc within the city and its peripheries. Infrastructure like roads, bridges were damaged and homes underwater with some deaths reported. The damage on the roads and bridges created severe traffic jams all over the city, in and out. We ask, why does this happen in the country, and particularly so for Dar es Salaam and its environs every year, it seems? To try and answer this question and relevant other questions which will emerge with me today are Henry Bantu. We normally refer to him as a transportation and safety expert. Next to him is Engineer Ngwisa Mpembe, President of the Tanzania Institute of Engineers, participating for the first time. Welcome. On my left is Dr. Shaban Mgana, a senior lecturer at the Ardhi University, a regular participant, but he had disappeared for a couple of programs until today. Next is of Dr. Brevias Kahosa, an economist, but with Kampala International University. He has participated in the program recently. So, gentlemen, welcome to the program. And this is a special welcome for you, Engineer Mpembe, because you're participating for the first time, as I said. And for these two viewers, I take no apology why you see them again on the TV this week, but because of their professional expertise, I thought they would come and help us in discussing these serious happenings, occurrences in Dar es Salaam and its environs. So welcome again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'll start the very first question with Dr. Mgana. Then, of course, we'll all try to answer this. Why are flooding and serious damage to infrastructure in Dar es Salaam and its peripheries seem to be a perennial problem every year, Dr. Mgana? Why every?
Well, I think, Mr. Simbeye, the real issue here is one thing we should realize: floods happen almost in every country, even big cities in the world. They do happen. What is the difference between those cities and our city is the scale and the reasons. In our case, I would say we haven't addressed the causes of floods. As such, we see this occurrence taking place year after year. Flooding meaning that the water does not follow or goes out of its waterways and create havoc to the communities, to the settlements of the population. And there could be many reasons for that. Okay, the urban planning could be one of them. More people now are settled in areas which used to be not having many people, whereby you can say the natural soil was able to accommodate the water quantity which was falling in those areas. And there were some places that had got some, in the case of Dar es Salaam, with some big ponds, small lakes, which could accommodate water and try to save huge, could create havoc to the property of the communities. Okay, but those things or those areas are gone. We may have good plans, urban planning, but are they followed? Do we adhere to the requirements of proper urban planning? Because urban planning is a paperwork. You should do A, B, C, D for the settlement. But if you don't follow, there is no enforcement, yes, then naturally there will be impacts. So I would say we haven't addressed the causes of flooding. Maybe the infrastructure we have, which are supposed to accommodate the heavy rains, are not of adequate capacity. The design period is over. Now they can no longer accommodate the heavy rains, which are primarily, as we can see later, due to climate change. The rains which we have not observed in the past, now they are taking place. In some places, people have got settlements, but there are no infrastructure to accommodate the amount of water and guide safe passage of water till to the Indian Ocean. Okay. In some places, the infrastructure are there, but they are not working. They are out of date. So there are so many causes which could contribute to this observation or this occurrence of flooding year after year.
Can you remind, or at least make the viewers understand? You said there were either lakes like Magomeni, Manyamala, and Tandale,
yes,
which were helping to what? Yeah. To absorb the excessive water. Is it true that there were lakes there?
Yeah.
And what happened to the lakes?
Yeah, in fact, there are lakes. And until today, those are the places which are heavily impacted upon by heavy rains. Being impacted upon, I mean, people are losing their property, their houses are being destroyed due to heavy rains. So they are used, Tandale, these were small lakes, Tandale, Mwananyamala, Magomeni lakes, and they were doing enormous work to protect the property and reduce the speed of water, because if you have so much water, is coming to the lake, is accommodated, its speed is reduced, and it comes out a little bit in regulated flow, not in a very havoc way. Now, if you have consumed that space now, space is not available. Instead of space for water, houses are built over it. As we know in Dar es Salaam, people like to build in those areas because there are phenomena whereby during the dry season now, there is no water, so people find there is no water, you can build a house. But when it rains, then the water assumes its position. Then you are in trouble. So that is what is happening. And you can say that could be a major reason, because if such place, there were no houses, then people wouldn't complain there are floods. They would say just it's natural way of water to flow through. Just like when heavy rains pour in the forest. Yes. You wouldn't complain, oh, a lot of floods. Floods, the word flooding means there is an impact upon due to rain. People are complaining. Now the water has gone outside its waterway. They are creating havoc to us. Then people always say, this should be flooding, flooding, flooding. But actually flooding, even in rural areas where there's just vegetation, forests, when they happen there, nobody would say, oh, they are heavy, there is flooding. But when you put the concept of flooding, there is human settlement, property impact, feeling that we are being impacted upon, we are losing our property, there is havoc, we are no longer safe, we are in trouble, so it's a flood.
Oh dear.
I think before we go further, this part of lakes in Dar es Salaam having existed is quite interesting. Who permitted these areas to be encroached? Should we blame the city fathers? And why have we kept quiet, particularly you guys who are dealing with the land use planning and the like?
You know what, maybe I'm not an urban planner, but I can say from just normal experience. When you have a lake, and you know, in the past a little bit, climate was a little bit harsh, and water started to dwindle. I mean, in the lakes, they get reduced, and as a result, as the water reduces from its highest level to lower levels, then people tend to construct houses. So the space for the lake is eaten away, I mean, from time to time. The urban planners, they used to call these areas as hazard land. Don't construct, these are hazard lands. Usually they use that word, hazard land.
And yet people construct.
Yeah, people construct hazard land. So that is why I'm saying enforcement of urban planning guidelines is an issue. So nobody is enforcing. And in a way, I would agree that enforcement is a little bit a problem, because there are no demarcation of flood levels. The highest flood level is up to here. So from here outwards, you can construct. There are no posts put in place This is
like
the
road reserve.
Yes, oh, yes, like road reserve, yes. Yeah, this is the highest flood level in this location. Yes. So you are not to construct anything here. You can construct just before this boundary. So something like that is lacking in all the so-called hazard lanes. Demarcation for flood levels. The highest flood level is here. What we have in water cycles is, they say, you have 30 meters from the middle of the road, I mean the river, or from the bank of the river. This is, you have to go 30 meters maximum on each side, so maybe 60 meters, you're not allowed to construct anything. But that is just for construction. It's not the indication of the flood level in that area. Okay. So flood level markers are missing. Where do the flood markers come from? It's I would say, is what we call water basins authorities in Tanzania. We have 9 water basin authorities. They are the people who manage our rivers, groundwater, surface and groundwaters. They are responsible for these things. Do we have one in Dar es Salaam? Yes, there is. They call Ruvu Wami Basin. So they are responsible. But I have learned recently they are starting to make not to mark the flood levels, but they put the gauges to measure how high the flood level is. So I presume that is the starting point. From there, you can now say, from this heavy rain which just happened, the highest flood level was here. So please, from now onwards, no construction up to this point. So maybe in the future now, maybe they're starting.
Engineer Mpembe, you heard what Dr. Mugana from Earth University said. I mean, it's very interesting. What's your point of view as an engineer?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I would like to go on the same lines and maybe just emphasize on what he mentioned regarding the urban planning. I'm also admitting I'm not a urban planner, but I'm supposed to be working with planners as part of my job. But in urban planning, the outcome of respecting urban planning, because urban planning also involves or accommodates also development of other infrastructures, like roads, bridges, and so on. You cannot construct roads and bridges outside the master plans. So this is the starting point. And when we don't respect the master plans, then we start to have problems. That's the beginning of having serious issues of whatever is later happens in terms of failures in our systems. So design, planning, and construction of infrastructures to support planned settlement goes line in line with, I would use the term integrated approach in planning and infrastructure development. If that is lacking, or if that is not respected, or that is not followed, then things falls apart. You start having problems in all sectors to do with planning and infrastructure. So I don't know, I don't want to suggest that this is a discussion regarding urban planning or master planning, but I think that's the basic blueprint of discussions and where to start from.
I see Henry is itchy to come. You will come in, Dr. Henry.
Yeah, I'm eager to come because being a transportant, these floods you see have a lot of impact on transportation, and particularly in a city like Dar es Salaam, where life here is made much easier when people move around. Mobility is very, very important in a place like Dar es Salaam. And unfortunately, you see, there is a significant impact on the flooding. You have got significant impact on transportation in a place like Dar es Salaam, because transport naturally is disrupted when the roads are flooded. and often you have got maybe cancellation of trips, and also you have got trips being routed or even misrouted. And of course you start experiencing traffic congestions and untold for traffic congestions. And when the worst comes to the worst, then of course you have got traffic jams. And that's when you have got the city coming to a standstill, nothing being done because of flooding. And to me, I know flooding can happen almost everywhere, but I think what is really important is how you manage your floods. When they happen, what happens?
So how prepared are you to handle the situation?
And I think that's the most important part that we should be talking here, in that it's unfortunate that we don't have one representing our city fathers here.
Yes, yes.
But I think it is when you have got a situation like this, that's when the city fathers, you see, should get down to mapping up all those areas which are prone to floods, so that eventually re-engineering can be done in those areas, and necessary improvements made in those areas, so that we don't experience the same type of phenomena year after year, year after year. And in Dar es Salaam now, we've been experiencing the same type of problems of the same magnitude, you see, year after year. Exactly, on the same areas, you say nothing is being done. And that's where I think the City Council should sit up and wake up and start doing something. I'm sure this is not a situation where the City Council should just rest on its laurels. So I'm very concerned about the productivity of people of Dar es Salaam, particularly when it rains and when roads are flooded, and when transport
bridges are washed away.
Yes, bridges are washed away, and then you start wondering, you see, where have the people who are involved with the management of the city been? So I think this is something that we should change. And it is important that engineers, you see, and town planners,
the one next to you,
exactly, should get involved. But then you see, again, maybe it has got something to do with the way we prepare our town planners. And this is something that we should also look into, to see how prepared are our people in the planning arena, also talking about the floods, the possible
by the way, Dr.
occurrence of plan.
Do you train, teach planners, either urban or rural? At the University of Ireland?
Yeah, urban planners.
Urban planners. Yeah, now, again, you see, you have got this guy.
No,
you are not.
As long as it's being taught at the university, your university.
Yeah, but even with the town planners, I have a situation like this guy having gone to Kasulu Secondary School, maybe, and then he passes his O-level. He goes to a place like, you have got an institute, RV Institute in Tabora, isn't it?
Yeah, there is.
Again, he scores, he comes out there with the flying colors, and then the next day you make him a town planner in Dar es Salaam. What type of planning can you really expect from a guy of that nature? I mean, academically, he's okay, but does he have that experience? Does he have the outlook? Is he exposed enough?
Different environments.
Yes, exactly. And what type of planning you see is really necessary, or is required in an urban center like Dar es Salaam, which is becoming busier and busier by the day? Right. Again, this is what I say. I mean, we should look into this.
Absolutely. Dr. Kahioza, I know you are also burning and itching to come in. What do you say to all these problems? We have these problems and damaged infrastructure, and just like Dr. Mgana said, Engineer Mpembe, and now Henry Bantu. What is your take on this?
First of all, thank you for inviting me once again for consecutive week. I will spot two issues in relation to what they have said. In particular, I'll be navigating on what they have said, but in a more a practical perspective. Number one, in the historical perspective of what has been happening, particularly in this city. If you are to go back some years from today, let's say 30 years, fiscal planning in relation to the rapidly growing urban centers in the town, the governments of the least developed countries, so to speak, lost their plot in 1970s, and this became evident when the public sector made control of the land use and the way to do their businesses. And therein, there was a gap that was left in. And the private sector didn't take much to wait for these people to make their house in order. And therefore, most of the problems emanated from there. And you can go this, you can rate this to a number of issues. I happened to read the master plan, the first master plan of the recent history of this city, of that of 1948.
Dar es Salaam.
Dar es Salaam. And then I read that of 1979. And then I read the recent one of 2010. If you look at those master plans, one thing comes out from the historical perspective. It is that the planners, you may say, these urban planners, the administrators, were caught in the so-called administrative black boxes. They tend to plan the way they should run these cities, particularly Dar es Salaam, from the secretive and exclusive angle, and thereby disengaging those who are being planned. And you can see this evidently from the way the city is growing and what is happening. And this gives me heebie-jeebies. And let me go to the second point from that perspective to cement the first point, is the way we have been seeing economic development and economic growth in relation to this city. I do agree with the doctor when he said floods or the calamities emanating from climate change is happening all over the world in the big cities. But we have our own exceptionalities. Dar es Salaam is growing, urbanization in Tanzania is growing at 5%. Dar is growing a bit faster than any other city in East Africa, and one of the fastest in the sub-Saharan continent. And then you see the influx of people coming into the city and the way they settle, they do their settlement. If you go into the policies of settlement in this country, in this city, and this country at large, you find that there is no proper planning in relation to, for example, one of the areas we'll discuss later is about urban agriculture management. So you talk about the Msimbazi issues that are happening, you talk about the Mtogore thing you are talking about, you talk about those lakes, and see the effects that are emanating from there. So the influx of people in the city in relation to urban growth, if you put in that equation of how do we plan this, the city and other cities, is a big problem. But again, you look at the construction side from the engineer, what he said, and Henry said it very well last time when we were here. Dar is owning 52% of all vehicles in this country. But look at the influx, you may call the flank roads or the feeder roads in this city and the way they are connected to the main roads. This brings in many problems when it rains cats and dogs, as it happened last week, and thereby not being in a position to protect these individuals in those areas. But number two is the way they are settling. That's 70% of people living in this city are living in the informal settlements. What does this tell you? This tells you that you have a small portion of the inhabitants in this city who are not prone to the negative effects of rains. And how do you help them once these occurrences happen? Is another question that we cannot solve in its entirety if you don't have the correlation of these factors. The last point I would like to make about this thing is the way I think we see it is in connection to economic development, economic growth, but is much more of the perceptions against facts. There has been a problem when we talk about planning and urbanization and how do we do that. There is a conundrum happening in the way we plan when we talk about the other areas apart from the infrastructures. You can see here, our debate is more likely to focus on the infrastructures. Yes, it is a problem, but the other problem is related directly to the connection between what we call the planners, the investors, citizens, and what are the outcomes having conjoined all of them in terms of development. So I think the perception, again, that perception that is against the facts in terms of plan. If you go to the big cities, and I think my friends have had, are more exposed maybe than I am. When you go into these big cities, we talk about in the ways they plan, the ways they do their things, and mostly the most populated cities like Mexico City, Rio de Janeiro, you look at the cities, and even California, the way they have planned their city, it is not because they have economic muscles, it is because they have been able to distinguish between the two, the perceptions when it comes to urbanization and their plannings, and the real facts about human life. So I think that's where we start. But going back, I think the first point I narrated is very important. The master plans of this city, the way they have been developing, in terms of the realities happening on the ground, there is a big mismatch, and I think we have to focus on that from the practical angle.
Engineer Mpembe.
Yes, I would really concur with that observations, and again, not to really drag only on the aspects of infrastructure. I think there is a socio-economic aspect behind. First, okay, we are dealing with the consequences which affects the wananchi, the citizen, but also on the other side in terms of the, I think Dr. Kayoza probably when I was reading him, he was going in that direction in terms of the political will and the how our policymakers perceive the aspects of planning, and of course making planning or urban planning a priority. I went through the land policy of 1995, and again it's back to the common cry that in this country we have quite good policy documents, and I think it's well written. It covers everything. Basically, it addresses all the issues you would think about making this issue proper. But again, as Mr. Bantu said, how are we implementing that? Where's the implementations? Where are the plans? There's a disconnection between what we have, the situation on the ground in terms of what is happening, and the results is, I think, people overtake institutions in terms of what is happening, and the end result is having what we have now. So probably later we are going to discuss regarding the adequacy of what we have in terms of accommodating and managing the floods. But I just wanted to add a point which I think is very important, which Dr. Mgana mentioned regarding demarcation of prone hazardous area. I think we have. I think I'm not 100% sure, but I think we have in Dar es Salaam, particularly Dar es Salaam, we have prone flood area which have been demarcated. Demarcated means they are known. And I think the famous Msimbazi Valley, we have Jangwani stretch, we have Msasani Bonde la Mpunga, which is famous, and parts of Kunduchi Beach. And of course, Ocean Road, the seafront near Aga Khan Hospital. These areas are demarcated, they are known, but I'm not sure if the public is aware. I'm looking into, I see there's lack of there's lack of mechanisms to not only inform before coming to enforce, but to make people aware of our hazardous areas within Dar es Salaam. And not only in this unplanned settlement, but also in planned areas like Mbezi Beach and even city center, which is planned. I think in the past we had serious issue when floods occurred. So there's aspect of institutional commitment and also doing the homework in terms of first informing the public, implementing what we have in terms of policy, regulations and laws, and of course for expecting also wananchi to play their parts. So I think we have a number of issues in different aspects and across the sectors which needs to be addressed. And at the end of the day, people look at the institution, the government, the professionals like us, like what is happening, because our talking, I think, will not really help them in most of the cases.
Before you jump to,
I was going to call for Dr. Mugana.
Listening to him very well, you find that he alluded to the fact that we have a big number of policies, and it's quite true. I think we have a big number of these policies. But there is, I think, something that is missing between what environmental economics has been postulating several times about the policies, I mean the environmental policies, planning policies and so on, with the real economic and the social benefits or costs related to that. So you have a policy, for example, if you go to the environmental policy of 1997 before its own amendments, if you go to the human settlement policy of our country and then look at across the lines of how it should be implemented, and then try to bring in the social and economic aspects of it, you find there is a huge gap. And therefore we may be having good policy planners, we may have good urban planners, and then on the other side, we don't think that the thing is something that can be, it's an end in itself. It can't be an end in itself.
So you're saying there must be kind of correlation between what the policy says and the articulation of the specific economic and social aspects, how they play into this, how they will have a negative impact or otherwise.
Sure.
And maybe, as Engineer Pembe said, by not involving the people, the residents, how you involve them, I don't know, maybe through their own system. It doesn't add weight.
That's what I mean, and I think they will add more, because if you go, for example, on the hydrological and the ecological aspects of the waterlands of this, for example, this city, and go read into those policies, you find that mismatch that is exposing itself without even trying to do a lot of analysis. So I think that's where we have to spot.
Okay, Dr. Mugana, before you come in. Dr. Mugana.
Yeah, maybe I can make more elaborations there. Is that when I talk about demarcation, it's not that these are not known flood-prone areas. They are known. But I'll just give you an example. Say the flood-prone area is known up to certain point. Say this is the point, extent. From here you can build your house. Now I build my house from there. The rains comes. I'm outside the flood-prone area by 3-4 meters away, or even 10 or 6, they say. When the flood comes, I am a victim. The flood comes to where I am. I have constructed
the
a
flood
house.
follows you.
Yeah.
They go outside.
So the reason is the highest flood level has not been marked.
Exactly.
That is what I mean. The highest flood level has not been marked. So even that area where it's supposed to be safe area, I'm not safe. So from the technical point of view, you must have readings of the highest flood level for every occurrence of flood, so that you can establish now from highest this level corresponding land or which coincides with this highest level is this point. From here you can construct. And that is not enough. You must make proper demarcations, create awareness to the population, put marks on the ground, don't construct inside this location.
Can that be effected?
And now the question is effectiveness.
I think it can be effected when all other things are equal.
Yeah.
But in a place like ours, you see, not all other things are equal. Even the normal planning of plots, you see, is delayed. And that's why this chaos that we are talking about here in buildings comes about, that the private move faster than the actual planners in the ministry.
Not the actual planners, actually, is the implementers. Because the plans, they've taken care of it. These are located for human settlements. You can construct a house. But it has not been surveyed. The planners are done. They said these are areas for human settlement. Okay, you can construct houses. But the plots are not demarcated on the ground. They are demarcated maybe in paper.
Yes.
So somebody...
The ordinary people, Tanzanian doesn't read the paper, doesn't read the policy paper. He just
so that is the problem.
Place, either he pays some money for somebody, he gets the plot and he starts constructing.
Yes, that's the point. So people construct houses in an unplanned way. And at the end of the day, they are told you are informal, it's an informal settlement. But actually, informal in the sense that I've not been allocated official plot by the government. That is the whole area. It's not surveyed. So if I survey it, I officiate it. Then I pay land rent and the like.
Time seems to be going against us. Tell me, I heard someone raise this issue, and I want you to react to this. Why is it that we can't tame the water that is coming down from all over places, even from the catchment areas, before it starts creating havoc, or redirect the water to go up to the sea for Dar es Salaam, for that matter? Is it possible? Then Mr. Engineer Pembe can also say.
Yeah, okay.
In terms of engineering, is it possible to?
I can answer that way. This way. That is from population increase, like in Dar es Salaam. The city has been growing faster.
Yes.
The population increase. When you have a bigger population increase, those people need houses. The houses eat away the lands which could have absorbed the rainwater. Okay? So the rainwater no longer have the time to penetrate into the ground. Instead, they just flow faster, because now it's only roofs, and these roofs are iron corrugated roofs. They don't allow any settlement. When they fall down, the water becomes misguided. And typical characteristics of planning of storm drainage is that the higher at the beginning of the catchment area, then you have small amount of water. But as that water reaches the lower levels, the accumulation of the quantity of water increases over time.
And the speed as well.
And the speed. But at the lowest level, the speed is low, but it spreads out.
And the quantity.
And the quantity and spreads out and covers a larger area and affects many people. So the idea of saying, well, we should tame it right there, the taming right there is possible, but that is to be studied, and you should have what we call retention ponds. So you retain in terms of having retention ponds, just like the small lakes used to do in Dar es Salaam, Tandale, Mwananyamala, Tandika, Magomeni. That's what they used to do, those small lakes, natural. So they tame the water for some time. The quantity of water which could have created havoc, they are retained there for some time, and they flow out in regulated quantities without causing any havoc. And the space was available. Now the space is not available. The space is taken up by human population. More space is taken by human population, less space for vegetation, less space for water to infiltrate into the ground and wetting the soil, And it's an enormous amount of water that does that job, that can be accommodated within the sites if it's not constructed, it's not a built environment. The moment the area becomes built environment, then you must provide the infrastructure to guide the water. Because the water now can no longer have an opportunity or even a space to get infiltrated.
Wherever it wants
yes,
to go.
So you must guide,
its own way.
And then comes the issue of the infrastructure. Now the infrastructure, some places have got infrastructure, but those are not adequate due to climate change. More heavy rains is observed now than before. So an infrastructure which was able to accommodate without overflowing, now it overflows because there is a lot of water due to climate change.
How about clogging?
Clogging is caused mainly by the solid waste.
Not particularly human activity.
It's human activity because the solid waste is coming from human activity. They're the ones who generate the solid waste. And if it's not collected, then that becomes a real issue. The small pipes or open channels which could have enough space to accommodate water, it can no longer be able to do that. Now they get blocked. Some space is taken up by solid waste. So the space which could have been accommodated by water, now it overflows. That's the problem.
Engineer Pembe.
Yes.
You engineers, I mean, I'm sorry to say this. I mean, out there, you hear, hatuna ma engineer in Swahili. We don't have engineers. If we had engineers, you know, these things wouldn't be happening. Is it true we don't have engineers? We have engineers.
No, we have engineers. We have very good engineers out there, and I think they are doing their best in terms of addressing this. The engineering profession is institutionalized. You know, we don't operate in isolation, and in the process, we are limited by the circumstances around running of those institutions. So, to answer your question, yes, I think it's engineering-wise, it's possible to manage water large scale, and basically, in engineering designs, you tend to adopt the natural setup of the earth to minimize the investment and the cost. So we normally follow the natural patterns, and as Dr. Mgana said, existence of small natural dams, water bodies, normally helps in this process. And you always try to follow and utilize existence of this kind of bodies within. So I think technically it's possible. There's the issue of economy of scales. Engineering, you know, a typical engineer would like to build big, because this is where you exercise the knowledge, and it's always good to do so. But, you know, we are limited by the resources available. And I would like to give a good example. You know, I think for those who have been to Dodoma town, you would see almost dry, big man-made rivers and drains. This was a result of implementation of the
Dodoma Master Plan.
Dodoma Master Plan. And people sometimes would wonder, like, what are these structures for? But I think those were built as a result of a good engineering design and planning, and you can easily have such kind of infrastructure to try to support and accommodate the eventuality of floods and the like.
Can you engineers design a way out here, which Dr. Mgana was talking about, catching the rainwater right from the source, from the hills like in Salaam, which flows this way? Can we catch that water and deposit it somewhere before it starts running havoc?
Yeah, as I said, I think technically it's possible, but I mean, you have limited resources. Probably it will be economically unfeasible and unjustifiable, because there are other means and ways to do that in a way. You would always like to have rain. And I think what is most important is to just try to respect the natural occurrence of and respect the topography and topology of the areas. And I think we are always going back to the settlement, the human activities, and alike. I was talking to my colleague and regarding the events of last week, as you started saying in the introduction, regarding Malechela Bridge in Mbezi Beach. You know, that's a catchment from basically Ubungo, Kimara, Mbezi area. In the last 10 years, there were farms. Typically, there were farms and bushes and alike. And that
the farms are very particular.
Exactly.
Mpunga.
Exactly.
It's for rice farms. And your rice farms means it's a wet area, basically.
And the water table is high.
It's high,
Exactly.
yes.
So that was downstream in terms of Mbezi, which was eventually later planned. But upstream of Mbezi River is Kimara, Ubungo, Mbezi, and Kiluvia. And you could see what is happening now. It's a lot of construction going on. Obviously, it's unplanned. And we have a lot of human activities going on in terms of small-scale agriculture and alike. And this has consequences in terms of affecting the natural pattern and flow of our streams and rivers. So everything turns upside down. Streams become rivers, rivers become streams, and it brings havoc. And that's not engineering per se, really.
I know you two people want to come. I want to go back to Dr. Mgara again. I'm being provocative here. Can we revive these lakes, which were natural lakes, but they were actually helping a great deal to contain the water?
I am one of
Tandale,
those. Yes.
Magomeni,
Mwananyamala, yes.
Can we revive this?
It's possible. Right now there is what is known as, they call it Development of Actions for Flood Mitigation in Msimbazi Valley. It's a World Bank project.
Yes.
They are trying to mitigate flooding in this area so as to prevent or to reduce the impact. And I'm one of those people who advocates restoration of these small lakes, because in today's language, all over the world, they have the so-called climate change smart infrastructure. Yeah. That means the infrastructure design now has to observe the climate risk and climate objectives in any country when you construct. Take them on board. So the infrastructure design should observe that, which will take care of the impact, possible impact of flooding due to climate change. Now, those small lakes could constitute part of that big scenario, which today's world they are calling as a smart infrastructure for climate change. So it's possible.
Reviving Lake Magomeni will be a smart climate change?
Yes, it is.
How do you revive Magomeni?
Yeah,
or even Mwananyamala, as you rightly say.
Yeah, because
but there are people already there.
But for Mwananyamala, I see some space. Some of it is still there. They are void because one of the big characteristics of having a river not to be encroached or a lake not to be encroached is for that lake to have water. Yes. If there is no water in the river, like in Msimbazi during the rain season, there is no water, people encroach because it's just a dry land. Nothing could inhibit somebody to construct a house, to do any development there. The same thing in a lake. Now for Mwananyamala, some space, people are afraid because it's already wet, there is permanent perennial water. So that is easy. You can compensate, or the municipality of Kinondoni could do something because they are needed. Those are needed right now. In the whole of Dar es Salaam, they need it to do something.
Gentlemen, I know this is a very interesting topic, and I'm sure viewers have learned a lot from the discussion so far. So let's come to conclusion, as it were, very quickly, with only one question, and I want you all to answer at the same time. What do you think are the challenges and indeed solutions to perennial floods, damage to our infrastructure, roads, bridges, which are basic structures to support an efficient transportation system in the country? What are the challenges, if there are? I mean, you might think there are no challenges. Very quickly.
I think the challenges?
Yes.
Well, definitely the challenges are to the effect that if they continue, then of course, roads will be destroyed, bridges.
They'll be built, destroyed, built, destroyed.
Yes. And I'm afraid, you see, not only the roads, you have got the airports, you have got the various towns in the country. Yes. They will also be affected. But I'm saying, like I pointed out at one point, I said, we have to be very practical in this matter. Practical in the sense that we have got the drainage systems, the existing drainage systems in our city, or even roadways. But I think those drainage systems are not being used properly, in that you have got the hard waste, and there is no unclogging of all these areas. We wait until the rains are there, then we start thinking that, well, this one we should have unclogged, we should have cleaned. Now people should sit up, and I think the Prime Minister's office, which deals with the disaster management and environment, should try to supervise this aspect. So they shouldn't wait for the calamities to happen. Yes. They have got to approach the various authorities, road authorities, airport authorities, and city or town councils to wake up and do the needful to clean the drainages.
Okay. Very quickly, one or two challenges.
Yeah, I'll, if you allow me, I will probably try to suggest some solutions, because I think the challenges are known, and and I wouldn't like to repeat. I will introduce something which I don't know if Engineer Mugana can support. This currently in our country we don't have a building act, and as a result we don't have courts for buildings, and for engineers, architects, town planners, this is a serious gap which I think affects how we do construct our buildings, particularly houses for settlement. So we need that, and I think Bantu just made a comment regarding the disaster management. How prepared are we? We have quite a robust agency regarding disaster management with the, I think, Prime Minister's office. I think we need to do some revisit on that. You would see a lot of institutions which are mentioned are probably outdated. They don't exist because of changes which is happening. And I think that is very important to have a very active and robust agency which will help us. Okay. But lastly, I think an area which we didn't really touch during discussion is to have our municipals, municipal councils and cities to have adequate budget for maintenance of infrastructure. I think that is very important. We shouldn't wait until disaster struck for us to go and do the maintenance or repairs. I think it increases costs unnecessarily, and we can avoid that by having a very well placed budget for maintenance.
Okay. Yeah. Dr. Mugana?
Yeah, I would say just more, I would add to what he said, but I would just be more specific. That is, you know, in engineering, there are some infrastructure which can be designed without having adequate information on the environment. But when it comes to drainage, these infrastructure to accommodate flooding and stormwater, you must have updated climate change data. Because the rains now are abnormal. You know, this is short rain period, but we had heaviest rain. Okay? While during the Masika period, we had rains and flooding, but now still the same cycle. We are within the year, but another heavy rain, even more than during the Masika period. That means rain pattern now is changing, and the quantity of rain which is falling is also changing. So we can no longer rely so much on the past historical data, which were a bit not as heavy and serious as they are. So we must have new data and financing. They should finance, proper financing.
Number one of the challenge, I think there is a demarcation between the environmental factors towards our economic growth and economic development. If you hear Dr. saying about the World Bank funds engaging, I don't know if it's solely or hugely in such kind of an important matter to human life of this city, it's very dangerous a bit, because you see the policies on one side, the budgeting process is said is on the other angle. Number two is that we have to, I think, to model the policies that are pro-poor, because when you talk about the defects of talking about climate change, and recently the University of Dar es Salaam released a report about climate change saying it is costing us 1 to 2% of our GDP. And if you come to this city, for example, you find that if you go to 45 wards, which accounts for 80% of the population here, are the most affected by floods or any other hazards from the effects of climate change. So I think the policies have to focus on that. The last point I'd like to make is about the infrastructure and the way these infrastructures are made. We normally talk about these traditional roads, the main roads. The feeder roads are not accounted for. The recent statistics from the data of the United Nations are showing that it is always when you don't construct well these roads, of course, which always lead to massive disruptions, as we saw last week, to the outside the cities, or the outskirts of the cities, always cost between 1%, 2% of the GDP of that particular area. And considering that as one of the main support of our economic contributions in terms of growth and development, you need really to have these policies which are incorporating all these areas. I think we can do more if we incorporate all those.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Mr. Director, I mean, it is such an interesting topic, so if I've exceeded 1 or 2 minutes, you bear with me. Thank you very much, my panelists, for your analysis of the situation we were in last week. And you know, the city came to a standstill because of the heavy rains on one day. And I read somewhere it says the downfall was heavier than it has been for the last couple of years. Although it is perennial, it has happened every year. Now, something has to be done. And I'm glad that you made some proposals, some suggestions on what to do. What excited me most is the revival of the lakes, which again, I'm very excited, which I didn't know about, Tandale, Magomeni. But if you revive those, what are you going to do with the people who are already settled there? Again, these are the very poor people that Dr. Kahyozo is talking about. Thank you very much. I'm sure viewers have learned this. Viewers, the Dar es Salaam and coast regions experienced 2 days of heavy rains on Thursday, I think, maybe particularly on Thursday last week, with serious damage to infrastructure, roads and bridges, as well as houses with the reported deaths. We were not sure how many actually died. These rains expose yet again the sad state of our drainage systems and infrastructure, as major roads became impassable during the week and a number of important bridges damaged, thus created a major havoc to transportation system in the commercial city. The Tanzania Meteorological Agency, TMA, said then that ongoing rains were a result of climate change, and you heard my panelists here refer to climate change in more uncertain terms, which we as country need to take serious note of. Obviously, the relevant authorities as well as the residents of this city and its environs should learn from the havoc caused by the 2 days recent downfall, taking necessary measures after warning from TMA. And as we heard from my panelists, we don't have to wait for TMA to warn us. The relevant authorities can start getting ready, which is preparedness, to clean the drainage system and organize a campaign to educate people on how not to clog the drainage system. This education should be an ongoing activity, like cleaning every Saturday introduced by the President. Let us hope in future we shall all be prepared and avoid serious havoc on our infrastructure. This is all we have for you today. Until next Sunday at the same time, and on Thursday at 15 hours for the repeat program. On behalf of my very able panel, Henry Bantu, Engineer Wisam Mpembe, Dr. Shaban Mgana, Dr. Bravias Kahyoza, and my TBC Television Center crew. Thank you very much. Till next Sunday.
Thank you.